Hey, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. So before I get into my little spill or whatever, I just want to let it be known that I am extremely uncomfortable. This is very new to me, talking, because I feel like I'm talking to you, but I'm not talking to you, but I'm talking to you at the same time. So bear with me. Normally, we would take a country from the Africa Volume 1 palette and we would elaborate on that country by giving you facts and all kinds of other different details. But today, we're going to switch it up and do something a little different. We're going to use Africa Volume 1 and the mini palette and a few other products to create this I Have a Dream inspired makeup look. Now, unless you've been under... When coming up with the concept for this look, I was very confused. I wasn't really sure about exactly what I wanted to do. So I decided that I wanted my eyes to be the clouds in representation of the I Have a Dream speech. I also wanted to incorporate words that represents who and what Dr. King stood for. Martin Luther King Jr. was born Michael King Jr. on January 15, 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia, the second of three children to Michael King and Alberta King. Michael King, who later changed his name to Martin Luther King Sr., was born December 19, 1897. King came from a comfortable middle-class family steeped in the tradition of Southern Black ministry. His father and maternal grandfather were Baptist preachers. His parents were college educated, and King's father had succeeded his father-in-law as pastor of the prestigious Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta. The family lived on Auburn Avenue, otherwise known as Sweet Auburn, the bustling Black Wall Street, home to some of the country's largest and most prosperous Black businesses and Black churches in the years before the Civil Rights Movement. One of the closest people to Dr. King in his early years was his maternal grandmother, his mother's mother, Jenny Celeste Park Williams, whose death in 1941 left him shaken and unstable. Upset because he had learned of her fatal heart attack while attending a parade without his parents' permission, the 12-year-old King attempted to commit suicide by jumping from a second-story window. Wow. At the age of 15 in 1944, King entered Morehouse College under a special program intended to boost enrollment by admitting promising young students like himself. Before going to college, though, King did spend a summer in Connecticut on a tobacco farm. It was his first time away from home and his first time experiencing race relations outside of the segregated South. In a letter back to his home, he wrote how shocked he was by how peaceful races mixed. They went to church together. He also noted to his parents that he never thought a person of his race could eat anywhere. That experience in the summer on the North deepened King's growing hatred of racial segregation. The president of Morehouse College, Benjamin Mays, was King's mentor. He left such an impression on King because of his commitment to fighting racial inequality. Mays accused the African American community of complacency in the face of oppression, and he prodded the Black church into social action by criticizing its emphasis on the hereafter instead of the here and now. It was a call that was not lost on King. King graduated from Morehouse in 1948. He spent the next 3 years at Crozer Theological Seminary in Chester, Pennsylvania, where he became acquainted with Mahatma Gandhi's philosophy of nonviolence. In 1951, he earned a Bachelor of Divinity degree from Crozer. He was also elected student president in a body composed of mostly white students. From Crozer, King went to Boston, where he was seeking a firm foundation of his own theological and ethical inclinations. He studied man's relationship to God and received a doctorate in 1955. So how King met Coretta? This is how it went down. So he had a friend named Mary Powell from Atlanta that went to New England Conservatory of Music. And so he hit her up and was like, any nice girls that, you could introduce me to. And she was like, I don't know, I got a friend, but I'll let you know about her or whatever. So she told Coretta, and Coretta was like, well, what did he like? You know what I'm saying? So she told him she was a preacher. Coretta was like, nope, I don't want no parts. And then over time, Coretta was like, you know what? I'll holler at him or whatever. So she talked to him on the phone, kicked it for a little bit, and then Mary was like bucking the whole situation up. She was like, man, he cute, he fine, blah, 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 all that good stuff. So when she did that, Coretta gave in. And then, when they first talked on the phone, he hit her with a lame line. He was like, I'm Napoleon at the Waterloo to your charms. But Coretta hit him with that, man, you don't even know me. I ain't even meet you yet. So they went on a few dates, in his green Chevy. And after like the second date, King knew, that she had everything he wanted in a wife. So, they got married in June the 18th, 1953 to be correct, on the lawn of her parents' house in her hometown of Alabama. They became the parent of 4 children. Yolanda King, born in 1955. Martin Luther King III, born in 1957. Dexter Scott King, born 1961. And Bernice King, born 1963. And during their marriage, King kind of limited Coretta to any roles in the civil rights movement. He was really expecting her to be a housewife and a mother, and, after 5 years in 1959, being based in Montgomery, he announced that he was going to return to Atlanta, and he did, and he came back, and, he co-pastored with his daddy until, he passed away or whatever. So, yeah, that's how that part went. Let's talk about the Montgomery bus boycott of 1955. History tells us about Parks, but omits Colvin. Let me explain. In March of 1955, Claudette Colvin, a 15-year-old black schoolgirl, refused to give up her seat to a white man in violation of Jim Crow laws that enforced racial segregation. King was on a committee from Birmingham African American community that looked into the case with Edie Nixon and Clifford Durr. They decided to wait for a better case to pursue because, you guessed it, she was a minor. Fast forward 9 months later, on December 1st, 1955, a similar incident occurred when Rosa Parks was arrested for refusing to give up her seat on the bus. The two incidents led to the Montgomery bus boycott, which was urged and planned by Nixon but led by King. King was in his 20s and had just taken up his clerical role. The other ministers asked him to take the leadership role simply because his relative newness to community leadership made it easier to speak out. King was hesitant about taking the role, but decided to do so because, nobody else would. So, basically, he stepped up when everybody else punked out. The boycott lasted 385 days. The situation became so tense that King's house was bombed. King was arrested and jailed during the campaign, which overnight drew attention to the national media and greatly increased King's public stature. The controversy ended when the United States Court issued a ruling that prohibited racial segregation on all Montgomery public buses. Blacks resumed riding the buses again, and we were able to sit front and center, full and legal without no issues. King's role in the boycott transformed him into a national figure and best-known spokesman for the civil rights movement. So meanwhile, while the boycotts are happening in Montgomery, the Atlanta student movements are planning sit-ins from March 1960 moving forward. So in August, they asked King to participate in a mass sit-in that was going to take place in October. So the sit-in was supposed to highlight the fact that the 1960 presidential election campaign had ignored civil rights. So the coordinating and everything took place. It happened on October 19th. King participated in a sit-in in a restaurant called Rich's. It was, in Atlanta's largest department store. It was among many that was arrested that day, that coordinated, participated, everything. And all of them was released within a couple days except for King. So the judge, J. Oscar Mitchell, sentenced King on October 25th to 4 months of hard labor. But before dawn the next day, King was taken to the county jail and transported to a maximum security prison. The arrest was cruel and unnecessary and completely uncalled for, and the sentence drew nationwide attention. Many feared for King's safety as he was about to go to jail with a bunch of white people that was crazy and that was doing the most, and they were scared for him. You know what I'm saying? So both presidents at the time, Nixon and JFK, were asked to weigh in on the situation. So many people were asking them to stop it, to fix it, all that. Jackie Robinson, Sergei Silver, a bunch of people. They were making phone calls to King's wife to express sympathy. And so as you can see in the previous clip, I just had little black people above my eyebrow, but I knew that I needed to pay tribute to the end of segregation. So I decided to go back and erase it and add the white people as well, holding hands with the black people. I also added words that I felt were very appropriate for Dr. King's movement and what he stood for. And those words are peace, love, freedom, MLK, his initials, civil rights, and justice. All right, so look, check it out. I'm going to do a part 2 to this video because I feel like it's so much that Dr. King has done to contribute to the world that we live in today. And I feel like I would be doing him an injustice by trying to squeeze everything into this one video. And on top of that, I didn't want the video to be super long. And I wanted you to actually grasp and get all the information and the facts that I'm giving to you. So I will, again, create a part 2 to this video. So remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share. And remember, in the words of Dr. King, and injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So I will leave you with the finished product of this look, as well as his iconic, infamous, and most memorable speech, March on Washington's I Have a Dream.
I have the pleasure to present to you Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. Five score years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream. My 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification. One day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted. And every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day when all of God's children be able to sing with new meaning, my country, tears of thee. Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring. From the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom ring. From the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom ring. From the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania, let freedom ring. From the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado, let freedom ring. From the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring, and when the capital, when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, thank God.